You're listening to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. Just a quick heads up before we get started with this episode, I wanted to let you know about a free resource for listeners of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. That means you. If you are planning your next trip abroad, or if you're just getting back out into the world again, maybe you're going to an event or to a festival or to a meetup, that you need to be prepared for what to say when you meet someone for the first time. Download our free Spanish conversation guide so that you'll be prepared to have a conversation with anyone that you meet for the first time in Spanish. We give you a list of the most common questions that you'll be asked and that you may want to ask someone when you meet them for the first time, along with the responses so that you can be prepared when you have that conversation in less than 30 minutes. So to get your free conversation guide, just go to SpanishConversationGuide.com. Simple, right? SpanishConversationGuide.com to download your quick guide to prep for your first Spanish conversation. In this very moment, we are all watching the best athletes in the world compete at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. And while we all know that Olympic athletes rely heavily on coaches to perform at their highest level, what you might not know is that language coaching can be the best way to accelerate your path to Spanish fluency. In this episode, I talk about the difference between language teachers and language coaches to help you determine the best strategy for you to move forward with your Spanish. And if you stick around until the end of the episode, I'll tell you how you can get coached by me live in the next few weeks. Así que vamos a empezar. Let's get started.
Bienvenidos! Welcome to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast, the show for Spanish learners that love music, travel, and culture. Close your grammar textbooks, shut down the language apps, and open your ears to how Spanish is spoken in the real world. Let us show you how to go from beginner to bilingual. Here is your host, certified language coach, Tamara Marie.
Hola, bienvenidos al episodio 135. Welcome to episode 135 of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. You know, it really does seem like there are coaches for everything these days. I mean, there are life coaches, career coaches, we're all familiar with sports coaches, but even personal trainers have become health and fitness coaches. And while some of this is really just hype and rebranding, I really do believe that coaching is a powerful process when it's applied correctly. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is a language coach? Now, in this episode, I'll explain how language coaching is different from teaching a language, when and why you might need a language coach, and how you can sign up to experience a live coaching session with me. So if you listen to the intro of this episode each and every week, you know in there I introduce myself as a certified language coach. So I'll be talking more in depth about exactly what that means in this episode. So once again, make sure that you listen all the way through to the end, listen to the entire episode so that you'll know exactly how you can sign up for the live coaching experience with me and what you can expect. So to start out, let's talk about the difference between language teachers and language coaches. So a language teacher, or a profesora in Espanol, teaches concepts in a class format. So this tends to be a little bit more formal, and the teacher is focused on communicating to you a specific concept about the Spanish language in this case, because we're talking about Spanish. They're all about how to convey information, right? So the goal of the teacher is to convey information so that you understand it. A language coach, on the other hand, or an entrenador, or in the case of a female, entrenadora, como profesor y profesora, for teacher. So there's always the masculine and feminine of those words. But in any case, a language coach actually facilitates learning through conversation. So it tends to be a little bit less formal, and the goal is not on teaching you a concept, but it's on facilitating your own learning process through conversation, which for many, many reasons is a much more effective way of getting you to understand. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is as we go through this episode. Now, a language teacher is also the authority. They're the ones that tell you how things are. This is how the language works. Trust me, I'm just going to tell you sort of how it is. And I'm the authority. You have to listen to me. A language coach, on the other hand, is your partner that helps you learn through a process of collaboration. So a language coach isn't interested in prescribing for you exactly what you should do, but rather works with you, gets a lot of information from you, asks you a lot of questions to really collaborate with you to come up with the best strategy, because we all learn differently. So if you missed last week's episode 134, I talked about the different types of language learners, and this is where a coach would incorporate that knowledge about the type of language learner you are to really help map out a plan that works just for you. So it really is a collaborative process, and it's not just built upon me telling you or a coach telling you exactly what to do and when to do it. A language teacher or profesor it really is a passive approach to learning for the student, right? So a teacher is the one who's saying, okay, I'm going to develop the class, the curriculum, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And for most of a lesson with a teacher, you're really just kind of sitting and listening. Now, they might ask you questions every now and then just to verify that you heard them and you can parrot back what you've heard or what you've learned. They can also do this through testing you and say, okay, well, here, did you get what I said, right? So there's different ways that teachers do that, but generally the student has a much more passive approach. The student is just sort of sitting in the class and they are along for the ride. A language coach, on the other hand, uses an active learning approach. So the coachee, in this case, is actually involved quite actively in the conversation because they have to be, right? You can't just sort of sit in a coaching session like you can do in a class, and maybe you sit there, you just nod your head, or maybe you drift off and you start thinking about other things, and you're really not paying attention. Now, how many of us have been in a class where we've done that, right? So with a coaching approach, it's much more active. So you really do have to be engaged. And it's the coach's job to keep you engaged by continuously asking you questions, getting feedback from you, giving you feedback. It's this whole process that's a much more active learning approach that doesn't just sort of let you sit there and drift off into whatever you're thinking about, whether it's, what you had for lunch, what you're planning to have for dinner, what you're going to do later. Very, very easy to do in a language class, but not so much with coaching, which is really a benefit because you really do want to be engaged. The things that you pay attention to are the things that you actually learn and remember. And if you're checked out for part of a class, you definitely will not remember that. Now, a language teacher is focused on helping you learn a curriculum, course,